how does a man like Bill Gates end up being the leading medical authority in the world? And how does he exert his authority? And is this COVID-19 pandemic playing right into his hands? How do you see that?
Well, yeah, I mean, and then the COVID vaccine, well, clearly, the direct answer to your question is that he's the second richest man in the world, probably the second or third richest man in history. And he's leveraged that money he pays 10%, one out of every $10 that goes to the WHO is his money. And that marginal 10% gives him the capacity to control 100% of the WHO's agenda. CEPI, Gavi, all of these institutions that really dictate global health policies and control in many aspects, in varying aspects, the lives and the health of 7 billion human beings who live on the planet. And he now has, he has got himself the capacity to dictate those policies. So, I think it's good that he's now on TV, that he made a decision to sort of come out from behind the curtain and, and defend his position, because I think a lot of people that it allowed people to focus and realize that there's a single man making these decisions for all of us. And that, what we believed, because before he started doing this, you had all of these trusted authorities. You had Anderson Cooper saying it's really important. You had Aaron Burnett and Lester Holt, and you had Anthony Fauci and Francis Collins and all of these people that we kind of trust saying the same thing. And you're thinking to yourself, well, that must be the truth if so many smart, trustworthy people are saying it. But now I think people are understanding that this is an agenda. It's an agenda that is driven by one man overwhelmingly, and that there's a lot of people, fellow travelers, who are, part of the orthodoxy because they are bought into it in different ways. And I think it allows people to see, to now express their skepticism about it in ways that they could not before.
And one of those is Anthony Fauci as well. How does
Yeah,
Fauci?
Anthony Fauci has a long checkered history of lying and of playing, of putting his own ambition and putting the vaccine program in particular in front of public health. And I'll just tell you one story, but I know many things about Anthony Fauci. But Anthony Fauci, there was a group of scientists led by Frank Ruscetti in the mid 80s that discovered, and then one of those scientists was Judy Mikovits. And I just did the introduction for her book, which is called Plague, which is largely written about this episode. This was the team that had isolated HIV and connected it with the AIDS epidemic, and said it can cause AIDS. It doesn't have to, but it can. And they had been the first to reproduce the work of a French scientist named Luc Montagnier, who got the Nobel Prize for that discovery. But they had reproduced it in the United States with different populations and with broader implications. And Fauci did two things. One is he read their paper, he forcibly confiscated it, and he ordered them not to publish it until he could get a protege of his to reproduce those studies and then to publish it himself. And it put a 6-month delay because Russetti's article was about to be published. It put a 6-month delay on the search for treatments and also for testing. And, people died because of that, clearly. And Fauci knew they were going to die. he put his ambition first. And then a couple of years later, the same team discovered a virus that had infected some of the blood supply. And that team had been assigned to look for the cause of chronic fatigue syndrome, which in the mid 80s, chronic fatigue syndrome, I don't know if you remember this, exploded. And you had all of these women many of them were accomplished professionals who suddenly couldn't go to work anymore. And it's like in the medical establishment handled chronic fatigue syndrome abysmally. It was atrocious. They dismissed it as a psychological ailment, that and they called it yuppie flu, and said that it was a feature of women who were not biologically equipped to have corporate jobs, high-level corporate jobs, who were being crushed under the pressure, and that they should just go back home and take care of kids, which then they wouldn't have any problems. But Judy Mikovits and Frank Rossetti discovered that the women who had yuppie flu, chronic fatigue syndrome, almost all of them had a virus in them that had not been seen before. And it was what they called a murine leukemia virus. They isolated it, and then they found that it was in the blood supply. And that women who did not have chronic fatigue, only 4% of them had this virus. It was clear the virus had some causative impact on it. And she published it. And they published it in Nature. It made a huge waves because it finally, for the first time, it was recognized that this disease was being caused by a retrovirus. It was a retrovirus. A retrovirus is a virus usually that comes from another species, and it has the capacity to hide in human beings for long periods of time before it causes harm, just like HIV. So they found out that this retrovirus had gotten into the blood supply and into the human biome through a polio vaccine, and that it was in the polio vaccine, it was in the MMR, and it was in a couple of other vaccines, live virus vaccines. And when Fauci realized that this was where they were going, he ordered Julie Mikovits to stop researching. And when she said no and to stop publishing, he confiscated all of her workbooks. He took her hard drive, locked her office, and then harassed her across the country, telling her that she could have her career back if she would publicly denounce these studies, and she refused. And he destroyed her career, and he destroyed Rossetti's career as well. And that virus is still in the vaccine supply, and it's still in the blood supply. And it not only causes chronic fatigue syndrome, but it causes all kinds of cancers and leukemias. And we know that now. And Fauci has simply left it in there to protect his little empire. So, I have very little. I gave a presentation to the highest level people at Francis College very early on in the Trump administration. I went in and gave a presentation on vaccines to the top people at FDA and NIH. And Fauci was there. And it was astonishing because I was there with Aaron Siri, who's an attorney, a really smart attorney, and also at Del Bigtree. And I gave a PowerPoint that people can see on Children's Health Defense website, and you can see how convincing it is. It's just scientific study after scientific study. It's undeniable. And afterwards, there was zero response from any scientific point of view. Nobody challenged our science. And afterwards, as I was leaving, Fauci came running up to me in a hallway, and he said, "I want to shake your hand. We can't talk about these things, and I'm just encouraging you to keep fighting for this, keep fighting for it." Oh, it was kind of a weasel move because he didn't speak up when we were in that meeting when he could have done some good. And I think that's that's emblematic of his approach. That he is there to protect the institution and protect his career.
And he has vaccine patents
And
as well?
people say, well, is this a conspiracy? And how many people could be? How could it be a conspiracy? How could all these doctors and